Good evening and welcome to We the People. On the program today, the Vasundhara Raje government in Rajasthan has put forth a controversial ordinance, one that now lays down a new law and says that anyone looking to contest local body elections at the Sarpanch or the Zilla Parishad and Panchayat Samiti level must have a minimum educational qualification. Class 8 pass to contest the Sarpanch elections and Class 10 pass to contest the Zilla Parishad and Panchayat Samiti elections. It's an ordinance that is already under scrutiny in the Supreme Court, with that case coming up on Monday, as activists and the state's opposition call the proposal elitist and discriminatory. On We the People today, we ask whether an educated politician is necessarily a better politician. If this is the law that applies to local body elections, why not to MPs and MLAs? TSR Subramaniam, let me start with getting first reactions from you. You often hear the middle class of India say, oh, if only our politicians were more educated. They're not so much referring to the local body elections, but to the MPs and MLAs. Now, education per se can't be something that anybody opposes. But for it to be a point of separating those who can contest from those who can't contest, next you'll say only educated people can vote. Is there any merit in this proposal?
Barka, this case we have to look at it, I think, from different perspectives.
Yes.
If you probably want to look at it purely as a legal issue,
yeah,
there could be Article 14 problems here. It is very anachronistic that 70 years after independence, we are deciding whether our people should be educated or not. We have got RTE, we have got compulsory education. We now want everybody to be educated, and when the state demands that our representatives are educated, at least show the flag. I have never heard that education reduces IQ or that education dullens the common sense.
But when the state has failed to the degree that if this ordinance goes through, just one statistics, it will exclude 80% of the rural population in Rajasthan from being able to contest these elections.
You are coming to the end of it on the argument now.
Yes.
My gut feeling is that it is an ill-conceived my gut feeling.
Yes.
Therefore, for the wrong reasons it will fail. For the wrong reasons.
You think it should succeed?
I think because we want compulsory education. We want for family planning, for removal of poverty. All over the world, the mantra is educate the women, educate the men, and therefore that is a vector
so
for
you're
progress.
saying it may fail
and
for
we are now saying that for our legislators, we should not. Second point is, don't confuse the legislator with the implementer. Here, the Sarpanch is an implementer. He signs, he approves. The fastest growing millionaire class in India is the Panchayat secretary, thanks to Manrega 2-3 years back. Now, all the minutes are signed like this. And therefore, if you require...
But are you saying education equals non-corrupt and uneducated equals corrupt?
What you are saying is, we don't need your chief secretary to be educated. You can use common sense.
What I'm interested in knowing is getting reactions from both the central BJP and the Rajasthan BJP to see if actually there's a synchronicity of views. So GVL Narasimha Rao, is this a proposal that you think is so good that it should be debated in Parliament and maybe the laws change for MPs and MLAs, or is this for the poorest section of India, which is the rural population of India?
I see this as an initiative at the state level. Yes. Taken by the Rajasthan government.
A good initiative or one that the party
I think it's a novel initiative.
A novel?
It's a novel initiative.
Okay.
I hope it succeeds because there is no class bias in this. No section of the population, be it the scheduled caste, be it the backward caste, be it women, none of them get eliminated because there are already reservations for all these groups within the Panchayat elections.
That's not true. If this is a rule, there won't be enough women contesting. 95% of women will be excluded from the process.
Please understand, any ward reserved for a women category will still have to be contested by only women. But only qualification now is they must get a minimum level of qualification.
Okay.
It's a novel idea. But I hope this also becomes an aspirational idea for people who want to participate in local democracy to really go and educate themselves.
You're saying it's an incentive for education.
It is an incentive,
you're calling it
but
an
let me
incentive for
just
education.
draw just one more point.
Okay.
I think let us not draw parallels between the state and central levels and the local level, because at local level you already have certain conditions laid out. Two-child norm is being implemented in a host of states, and most of them are, a number of them are Congress-ruled states. So where anybody who has more than 2 children is ineligible to contest. So why have that? That also is a restrictive idea.
Okay, Dr. Joykumar, take that up. Is that comparable to this proposal or ordinance rather? It's not even a proposal. It's now law at the moment.
So, I'm not going to bypass.
Struck down by the Supreme Court.
I'll definitely come to it, but I need to. When I was hearing Mr. Subramanian, everybody say that it scares me because what you're saying is if you get 85% of the people in the general areas, and as far as women, 95% of the women cannot be candidates for the Panchayat election. Whenever a political party does anything, then don't take them on face value. So there is an agenda to acquire political power by ensuring.
That's
and it's obvious.
As it is for the BJP.
So this is what scares you. You know, through subterfuge, you're going to pass legislations, ordinances, get rid of 95% of the people who can stand elections.
But answer his point that the two-child norm has been pursued in Congress-ruled states as well.
Again, you know, the two-child norm also fundamentally, today we speak as a principle. You put the blame on the women. See, the fundamental issue is that the women has no control on the two-child norm. So if you're going to say that one bad act makes the other thing right, I'm not going to get into the.
So what is your specific opposition to this ordinance?
My specific opposition to this whole thing is, first of all, it removes 95% of the women to fight elections. It removes 82% of the people in general areas to fight elections.
Yeah.
It has been done just to acquire political power because it's not politically convenient. Tomorrow we will say in this area you need PhDs. And the Wall Street crisis and the global crisis got because of very educated people. I've been in the parliament and some of the most dishonest guys are highly educated.
I think I'll allow Mr. Subramanian a quick rebuttal and then I'll come to take it to Gurcharan.
It's ridiculous to say
that
the educated people
I get your
bad.
point. Were you conflating education
or
uneducation? Those who are educated are more honest. Is that your argument?
No, I'm not.
Because you did refer to the overnight millionaires and the embezzlement of funds.
Like so many things, is education neutral. I think it is part of the genes. I mean, I don't think we should confuse the issues here.
Okay.
I don't think we should confuse the issues here.
Yes.
But in this particular case, what are we arguing here? We are now saying that this is a national requirement. It is an executive, that person has to sign papers. You are asking, he is practically an employee. Once upon a time, the Sarpanch had no role to play. With new action in our Panchayat Raj Act, they are being involved in nearly every development activity.
But you could change their role instead of excluding them from the process.
They are now employees of government.
Okay.
And we can't
illiterate.
That's
so again, the intent is to ensure people who are not convenient to your political system don't get it.
Can we move on?
You know, this is not a new idea. This was debated in the Constituent Assembly, whether there should be any education qualifications for our legislators.
Yeah.
There was a letter written by the first election commissioner to Mr. Nehru saying that he believed there should be some education qualifications for legislators. And Jawaharlal Nehru wrote back to say that he did not agree. I mean, I can understand what Mr. Subramanian is saying. In principle, we do want educated legislators. This is an executive role.
Yeah.
But we have learned in the business world that leadership is more correlated with determination than with intelligence or education.
So is this a proposal you support or you oppose?
I oppose it, but I also feel that this is complex because the role of the chairperson of the Panchayat has changed from Mr. Nehru's time.
Okay.
Also, you know, we had a PhD, we had a prime minister with a PhD in economics who turned out to be a failure. And the Indian people decided to bring in another person with far less education but with far more determination. So it's complex. It's not whether I agree or do not agree.
You agree with the idea behind it but not the way it's being done.
I do believe in the idea, but the Democrat in me will say that I will not agree.
He's playing it.
So let's do some tests.
Ajay, you're saying he's playing it both ways? He's playing it both ways.
It's absolutely safe.
No, but I have to finish my point. The point is, we need information. Do research between people who are legislators with education versus with not with education.
Okay.
And who performs better.
Can we bring in Siddhi Kumari, who's a BJP MLA from Rajasthan? Now, the opposition has pointed out, and as have the activists, that 23 of the BJP's own MLAs have not passed class 10. On the ground, what is the political thought behind this proposal?
I think it's a very profound thought over here.
What is it?
And the point is, the education is the key. And that is the reason this sort of a amendment has taken place. If you were to look at the history, there are several people who have reached the parliament through the panchayats. You have Shankar Pannu, who was the Zila Pramukh in Ganganagar. He's reached the parliament. There is Tarachand Bagoda. He's Zila Pramukh of Dungarpur. He's reached it. Like, you have to start the role somewhere of education. Being an MLA second time, I already feel that, you know, if I was, you know, meeting a little more educated people, my implementation would have been faster. In
so
the
MLA,
I realized
the level of efficiency or competency
absolutely.
to your ability
and
to
the
deliver.
demands of the people, they're as uneducated. I feel that, you know, I want to like urge them to say or tell me some demands, but the demands don't come.
When this case comes up in the Supreme Court, is the argument, as TSR says, going to be a legal one, or is it that you oppose this in principle?
It will obviously in court be a legal argument. What is important to remember that the Indian Constitution is also a philosophical document.
Yeah.
It actually enshrines what is the nature of democracy we are talking about. The reason why we have filed this PIL is because this is actually not only elitist, but an anti-people, particularly anti-women, anti-Dalit, anti-Adivasi, anti-poor. Data of the 2001 census shows that 95% women in rural Rajasthan are today uneducated. You can put a reservation, but who is now going to be in that seat of reservation is not going to be a woman who is a poor woman or an Adivasi woman, etc. In democracy, you are saying who is going to govern? Who is going to be part of this participatory democracy? Let us go back to why was the 73rd Amendment made? In fact, if anybody was to read the statement of objects and reasons, the first paragraph says, these institutions are not viable in India because there is insufficient representation of SC, ST and women. You are excluding those categories. There is nothing to show us that women Sarpanches who do not have school leaving certificates have not performed well. In fact, some of them have been applauded and have been rewarded by the UN and others. We have seen the right to information emerge from the villages of Rajasthan, and we are being told people are not making demands. Everybody is saying, of course, education should be there. Who is to provide education?
GVL, let GVL come in, then I want to go to Rohini and Kavita.
No,
GVL, quickly.
I think there are...
When you say it's a novel idea, when Siddiq says, you know, education is key, the fact is it's a collective failure of the country. So how can you penalize people
clear this
for
confusion.
Yes.
That there is no bias or against a particular caste or
only
community.
operate in that way.
How is it anti-Dalit? Please explain to me. How is it anti?
Because the largest number of uneducated people are Dalits.
I think any seat which is any panchayat, any ward reserved for a particular caste cannot be filled by any other caste. So there is no class bias here.
You can't bend the rules.
That's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. So you won't get out of all the Adivasis or scheduled caste or tribal women. You'll only get a particular people who are, and that's where the Panchayati Raj Act came.
That's how your reservation system happens.
One second, let me complete. Just one second.
Sir.
So the issue is that in 1970, there were these village interested parties, there were few powerful people, you're going back to it. And what's interesting, in countries like England, there were property rights. America had no women voting. We are going backwards again. So
but you know, Congress states, Ajoy, have also discussed this proposal. I know Maharashtra has at some point. Andhra Pradesh did it.
Even Rajasthan, Sachin Pilot.
Yes.
3 days before ordinance was passed.
Congress is doing it and BJP is doing it, both are anti-people. So that's not the point here.
Ashok Gehlot government.
Can I just ask one question?
Let him just make his point and then you can ask the question.
Ashok Gehlot government wanted to moot the same proposal. It's all there in the media reports. Sachin Pilot welcomed it 3 days before in a Hindu news report, and 3 days later, he writes an Indian Express editorial saying, I oppose it.
Okay, I need to move on to others.
One very short point.
Very short point. I've got to move on to Kavita and Rohini.
Of the people of this country, particularly the poor, are not a football between Congress and BJP. Correct. My question to the BJP is, why an ordinance? This is a surreptitious, devious method of excluding people from democracy.
Quick response, and then I want to bring in Rohini Pandey. Yeah, come on.
One, I think...
why an ordinance? Why couldn't you wait? Why couldn't you debate it in the assembly? You have the majority there anyway, so you could have passed a law if you so wanted.
Personally speaking, I think it should have been brought in as a law. And it could have easily been done. We have a brute majority in the state assembly. So I'm saying there was no need. But that's the technical point.
Rohini Pandey, Harvard actually produced a paper that looked at how delivery systems work and do they change, does the efficiency change if the representatives at the local level are more educated. And a paper that you advised on did find that in fact there is a correlation between education and the efficiency of the public delivery system. That's the argument I'm hearing TSR Subramaniam make, to say this is a good idea. It'll fail, but it'll fail for the wrong reasons. What have you and your researchers found on the ground?
Barkha, I think education is a very important thing. It's particularly important when you take something like the Panchayat and make it largely an implementation institution.
Yeah.
But I think what's getting mixed a lot in that is education doesn't come alone. There's other characteristics like gender also matters. So in a different study, we also find that women often turn out to look less corrupt. They also turn out to make very different decisions. And so you can't take one single dimension and say we care only about education.
But do you think there's some merit in saying that therefore you could have changed the executive responsibilities of the Sarpanch if need be, instead of removing them from the entire process of being able to contest?
Absolutely, and I think there are examples, especially as we see more and more, for instance, the use, for instance, of unique ID of bank accounts where the money is now going directly into accounts rather than actually needing the Sarpanch to clear accounts, that you are moving towards a system where you can try to say that the Pradhan goes back to the role they have. One thing that is getting missed out a lot in this is we are putting a lot more money through the rural system. We need to recognize the fact that this is going to require us to have good administration.
Yeah.
You can't take a political position and say they have become administrators. You actually have to find that administrator and you have to implement it.
Kavita, as somebody who signed the letter opposing this ordinance, do you believe that there is some merit in what Mr. Subramaniam is saying, that you can't say education is not a virtue? So I'm giving the contrarian argument. Are we being too politically correct here?
Nobody is against education, schooling. Let's differentiate between education and schooling.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those Sarpanches are sitting,
Yeah, we're
are
going to
highly
hear from them in a
educated,
moment, yeah.
never been to school.
Yeah.
So let's first distinguish in this whole debate, we are collapsing and this is wrong. So schooling, formal schooling, your state only takes responsibility in 2010. So you cannot try to push it before 2025, number one. Number two, are we trying to say that quote unquote illiterates or under 8th past,
Yeah.
you know, 5th pass, etc., don't need to be represented? And my last point, they wanted to bring this particular law. Why was Madam Vasundhara Raje scared of a public debate within our own party?
Siddhi
No,
Kumari, let her respond to that. You raised so many points, I won't remember them all. Siddhi Kumari,
because
I
I've
think
been
there was
debated.
absolutely no question
I want
of
to tell
having
the
a debate.
intent
It was
behind it.
unanimously
what is the
passed.
intent? What is the
Not
intent?
intent is very clearly to work only with the elite rural class, because say for example the Maeve community, they are in 8 tehsils. You will not find 21-year-old and 8th pass. You're going to have them not at all.
Okay, I want a quick
the
response from
opportunity
Siddhi on
to
this.
contest
Why
is
not
lost.
public debate? Why not an assembly debate? Forget a public
I
debate, a
think
debate
there
in
was
the assembly.
there was no question of that, because
Why?
it was
How can you bring an
everyone was
ordinance?
inconvenienced. You know, like they were asked, everyone was understood.
There's not a single
all the
reason
members
for
knew
it.
about it.
Democracy has a process.
I feel
I'm
that
telling you, it
the
was
Queen feels that you should pass ordinance, the Queen feels that we should change the setup.
No, that's
so the
not
Queen
true.
is happy.
No,
That's not true for her person. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. You're personalizing her comment. That's not
I
fair.
think it's very unfair.
That's not fair.
That's
That's not fair.
extremely unfair.
Okay, 1 minute.
I said that's how Congress.
Kavita, 1 minute. I can't follow all of you because you're all speaking together. 1 minute. Yes.
For the judicial ratification of the judicial appointments bill was called in September. They could have
Can we now park this for a moment? I've got to move on.
And just one last point.
Yeah.
This is not an ordinance or this is not a law that immediately that you say you implement and you wipe out illiteracy. It requires time.
Okay.
If that
Okay,
is something,
Siddhi, I must ask you again.
And the
Okay,
bureaucrats
Kavita, I have to
cannot
interrupt you. I have to interrupt you now. I have to interrupt you now.
I'm a citizen.
Bureaucrat.
I'm a citizen.
Okay, but
I'm not a bureaucrat.
You're bureaucratic minded.
40 years back.
Okay, let it. 1 minute. Kavita, you made your point now. Please calm down.
By law,
Okay. Kavita, I'm requesting you, please let other people speak now.
Barkha,
1
it's
minute.
very important.
1 minute, Ajoy. I think you've all had your say. We've got to let other people speak. Siddhi,
I
complete
think
your point.
it's a very basic thing. Education is the key, and therefore Rajasthan
Please
is implemented.
provide it to the
Let's see
people.
how it goes. Let's see what the
eliminate 80%.
I won't.
eliminate
Okay, can we?
I don't think so.
Can
That's
we let
gonna
her
happen.
speak, Kavita? We must allow her to speak. Yeah, but
I'm
she's
being
the right to
absolutely
review.
honest. I've worked
Then you're
there.
very biased. You have an
I
Kavita, let her
don't
speak,
think so.
please.
That's not true. I think it's a new scheme. It's Renaissance in Rajasthan. Let's see how it goes, and I'm very hopeful it's going to
Okay,
go
now
well.
you've all spoken. TSR Subramaniam, any quick rebuttal before we hear from these women who are actually Sarpanches who are going to get disqualified by this ordinance?
I have only 3 sentences.
Yes.
It is a sad day that 70 years after independence, we are talking about basic education for our people, number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, if you want the people to be educated, but you don't want people's leaders to be educated, I think again it is illogical. Number 2.
Schooled.
Please don't interrupt me. You already insulted me, don't interrupt me. Number 2.
I've not insulted you.
Please. Number 3, we are now again confusing between a legislator whose role is different, between an executive. We have had a sea change in Panchayati Raj in the last 70 years.
Yeah.
Whatever is being done in the state and Delhi are now being done sought to be done there in about 20 different fields now.
Okay.
The Sarpanch has a huge role and all the money
I
in
am
the
saying
district,
maybe that
and
role could be
therefore
changed
it
if
is
there's-
important for that person to be, unless we take the position government servants need
Okay,
not
I'm
be
seeing a lot of
effectively
hands go
government
up.
servants.
I'm seeing a lot of hands go up, and I think you've all had your say. Let's hear from the women on the ground. नौरती जी, आपसे शुरू करूंगी. आप कहाँ की सरपंच?
मैं राजस्थान के अजमेर जिला है और हरमाड़ा हमारी ग्राम पंचायत है.
आप कभी स्कूल गई?
मैं स्कूल नहीं गई. मैं 81 से जो भी शिक्षा का काम है और मेरा दिल के महीने में स्कूल में नहीं गई, बट मैं पढ़ाई लिखाई का एक दायरा पकड़ा और मैं आज के 15 साल पहले मैं कंप्यूटर सीखा और मैं 700 महिलाओं को एक कंप्यूटर सिखाया और आज मेरी पंचायत का मैंने मैं दावा करके कहती हूँ कि मैं डेटा फिट करती हूँ, नेट खोलती हूँ, प्रिंटर काटती हूँ. फिर मेरे पास डिग्री नहीं है. मेरे पास में डिग्री नहीं है. मेरे को अनपढ़ कहते हैं. मैं इतना विकास
ये जो कानून आया है और आप नहीं अब लड़ पाएंगी दोबारा?
नहीं, मैं लड़ूंगा. लड़ूंगा.
चुनाव नहीं लड़ पाएंगी अगर
नहीं,
कानून
नहीं, मैं कानून दिल्ली का मैंने लड़ाई लड़ूंगा और मैं पंचायत में जिला प्रमुख में कहां पर भी हमारी सीट आएगा मैं लड़ाई लड़ूंगा. और इसी का खंडन कराती हूँ कि 8वीं पास का लागू कैसे कर दिया, एमपी का लागू क्यों नहीं किया? क्या है जो सरकार है हमारे लिए शोषण करती है.
Mr. Rao, you know, I think she speaks for herself, and I hope it leaves you a little bit speechless on this ordinance.
No. And let me also say, there may be many postgraduates who cannot do basic things, may not have learned anything in their education. So I'm not taking any side on this, but you have to have, when you want to aspire for building your leadership, grassroots leadership.
Do you still think it's a novel idea? After listening to Norati, do you still think it's an idea, but is it a good idea?
It's a novel idea.
It's a dreadful idea.
It's certainly a novel idea.
It's a
but
novel idea of exclusion.
I have certain concerns about its implementation. Whether certain communities, you will get enough practicality of this idea. We will
So
see
you
only
agree
when,
with the principle, but not necessarily with the
yeah,
specifics.
and then just one more sentence. One more sentence, Barkha.
Gurcharan, you said it was complex.
Yeah,
But
and
you had
I
Norati
think,
there
you
saying,
know,
I can be an administrator. I acquired computer skills. A lot of skills are vocational. They can be acquired. You don't get them by passing class 8 or class 10.
We have learned the same thing in the private sector. The best CEOs are not the best educated people. You know, companies make this mistake all the time. You'll get a resume of somebody who will say IIT, IIM, Harvard Business School. We'll say, let's take him. And we'll find after 2 years that the fellow, all he does is produce a great report. Why has Rajasthan government done this? I mean, we should be, they're criminals in politics, for God's sake. We need to fast track those people.
Can we hear from somebody else now? We've heard from one of the women. Let's hear from one of the men. I have Ladu Ram here. आप कहाँ के सरपंच हैं?
मेरा नाम है लाडू राम और ग्राम पंचायत कियारी पंचायत समिति कोटड़ा उदयपुर जिले का.
आप आदिवासी एरिया से?
अभी एसटी से हूँ, मैं आदिवासी एरिया से हूँ. और मैं इस पंचायती राज का जो कानून बदला है, शिक्षा की बात आई तो अच्छी बात है, टॉयलेट की बात आ गई, बच्चों वाली बातें आ गई. अब हम ये चाह रहे हैं कि विधायकों के लिए एक दर्जन बच्चे पैदा हो रहे हैं, उनके लिए प्रतिबंध नहीं है. और नीचे बिल्कुल जो गरीब जो लोग हैं उसमें ऊपर आप कानून थोप रहे हो. मेरा सवाल ये है, तो लोग अभी भावना है कि इस कानून को, शिक्षा की बात करो, शिक्षा को लागू करो, उसके बाद इस कानून को तुम लागू रखो. हम नहीं कहते. गांव के अंदर स्कूलें बंद हैं.
आप कौन सी क्लास तक पढ़े आप?
मैं 8वीं फेल हूँ और 7वीं पास हूँ.
अच्छा, तो अब आप जिला परिषद में नहीं लड़ पाएंगे, पंचायत समिति में नहीं लड़
नहीं कानून बन गया तो कहाँ लड़ पाऊंगा जब वो 10वीं साल है.
And Bharka, 17,000 schools have been closed in Rajasthan in the past 1 year.
मैं
17,000 स्कूल आपने
मैं
बंद
एक
किया।
सवाल करना, मैं आप सभी प्रतिनिधियों से सवाल करना चाहूंगा, आदिवासी ट्राइबल एरिया के अंदर कितने लोग परसेंटेज पढ़े लिखे हैं, ये सर्वे करें, उसके बाद इस कानून को लागू करें।
Okay, Vrinda Grover and then Rohini Pandey. Vrinda, go ahead.
I think it's a very sad day that after 70 years, governments across the country are not providing education to the people. You cannot, the state cannot take advantage of its wrong. This is a backlash ordinance. They want to now impose an elite agenda. They want to take away power from the people.
Okay, Rohini, you want to come in?
I just want to quickly say one thing. I think one argument that I've heard a few times is that this is an aspirational law. In the data, what we see is actually often the opposite. People who are not very educated recognize the importance of education and the things they're excluded from. So in the data, for instance, when we look at educated men and women, you actually see things like the gender gap in education goes down when you have female leaders irrespective of education, because they particularly recognize the importance of education. This is a very loose argument to make, and one that we don't see in the data.
We should not over-generalize these research findings now. These very highly complex socio issues in rural areas, you can't go to two.
Okay, go chair and then Ajoy. Go chair and then
No, I want to ask Rohini a question. She obviously has some data. Is there any data which suggests that somebody who has education is more effective than with less education?
I think that is what one of the papers
there is
did
some
find.
evidence that, especially when you come to more administrative roles that Mr. TSR is talking about, for instance, in things like payment delays in Narega or expenditures, you see more. But this is exactly the point, that there are many things that are leaders doing right now. So you can't pick one, like saying administration Narega, that's more important, for instance, than what you choose to invest in, or education. I think certainly in Rajasthan, a key thing is that Rajasthan is the last in female literacy. It's #1 in the gender gap. And I think that's the reason why gender is repeatedly an important issue here.
Okay, Ajoy,
the fundamental issue is, what is it as Indians and the philosophy of India, inclusion, getting as many people into it, not letting anybody behind.
But you want to respond to the BJP argument that the Ashok Gehlot government wanted the same proposal.
And I think again, it's, you can say something and without documentary evidence. So first question, so I'm not going to get into that. But the fundamental issue, like what Brinda said, what does the philosophy of the constitution stand for? Get everybody, the idea to include everybody, the most marginalized community, women and Adivasis, should be included. What are we saying? Education, qualification,
and then I want to hear from a Sarpanch who actually has sort of a complete schooling and college and degree, and did that make any difference to her experience? But
this ordinance, this will not in any manner militate against inclusion or militate against any reservation. One second, let me complete my point. Please allow me. Please allow me. Let me allow. Because there are, if even by a remote stretch of imagination, it hurts the interests of the marginalized sections.
She cannot contest elections.
No, I'm talking about a group as a whole. If it militates against even marginalized sections, I think we would certainly not support it. But it does not.
But in real terms, it
does not. It's only education.
This is a very fallacious argument.
Can we hear from Aarti and then Kavita? You can speak after that.
That is the issue.
Okay, we've heard from women and men who were not able to complete their schooling, dropped out before class 8. Northi never went to school. However, let's hear from somebody who has a different experience. We have Aarti here from Odisha. She's a Sarpanch with an MBA degree, used to be an investment banker. Do you feel that education made a difference? आपको लगता है कि डिग्री होने से जिस तरह का आप काम कर पाते हैं उससे कोई फर्क पड़ा है?
एजुकेशन नेसेसरी नॉट कंपलसरी होना चाहिए. एक्चुअली क्या होता है, अभी ग्रामांचल में 65 से 70% अनएजुकेटेड है हमारा इंडिया में. हम जितना रिसर्च जितना पढ़ाई किए हैं देखे, अगर नेसेसरी है कंपलसरी करना चाहते हैं हम, पंचायत से पार्लियामेंट तक जितना सदस्य आते हैं, लाइक एमएलए, चेयरमैन और सबके लिए कंपलसरी होना चाहिए. क्योंकि देख, हमारा पंचायत में एक साबालक शिक्षा आंदोलन हम खुद शुरू किए हैं. नो थंब इम्प्रेशन, ओनली सिग्नेचर.
नो थंब इम्प्रेशन, ओनली सिग्नेचर. तो आपको लगता है ये एक आइडिया, अच्छा आइडिया है कि बुरा आइडिया?
अच्छा आइडिया है, लेकिन अगर होगा तो पंचायत से पार्लियामेंट तक सबके लिए होना चाहिए.
So you think it's a good idea, लेकिन सबके लिए apply है, सबके लिए लागू.
सबके लिए होना चाहिए.
Siddhi, would you support that? You see, this could be taken more seriously if your government had actually spoken about applying it to your legislators to your MLAs as well. And I remind you again that 23 MLAs and 2 BJP MPs from Rajasthan are not class 10 pass.
Yeah, that's fine.
So isn't there a hypocrisy in this?
Then I don't think so, because you start from the
don't think
Panchayat
there is
Raj
one-
and you go up to the other.
You cannot
Ari, let me
start
just-
penalizing the person at the bottom.
Let her
first.
speak.
Let her speak.
Let her speak. Let
I
her
think the
speak. And I'm
change-
taking questions now for those who have
the
questions.
key-
Please raise your
not
hand.
let me.
I think
come
the
to you right after.
the change is from the grassroots level going up to MPs and MLAs, I'm sure. That's also on the agenda, but I think it's better to give this time and see how it progresses and how
Okay,
it functions.
Kavita, TSR then Kavita, yeah.
But
Just
the
on
state
time.
has no competence to legislate on the qualifications of MLA, which is in the national arena. The state has competence to legislate, rightly or wrongly, in the case of Sarpanches within the state, number one. I think she has hit the nail on the head. There are people illiterate who become geniuses. Akbar was a genius, Kamaraj was a genius, so many people.
And Kamaraj was, I think, class 5 pass.
Only class 5. On the other hand, universally, I don't think we should have a debate whether education is good or bad.
No, that's not the debate.
No, aspirationally.
That's not the debate. Sir, will you say tomorrow that uneducated voters should not, people should not be allowed to vote?
No, aspirationally, that person is a functionary. Unless you want to change 20 acts, including Panchayat Raj Act today, which means we want to reverse the trend of decentralization.
Okay, Kavita, quick response, and I want to take questions.
Actually, she's an executive.
Okay, let Kavita respond
She's not
to
a
that.
legislator. She's an executive.
So you're saying there's a difference in the
She's an
role.
executive.
Okay, I want to follow up on that. That there is let's take it forward. That there is a difference. His argument is there's a difference in the duties that are performed by an MLA and an MP, and difference in currently the duties being performed by a Sarpanch or a Zilla Parishad or a Panchayat Samiti member. Now, are you willing to at least concede that where there is executive responsibility, there is a problem if there is no educational qualification?
There are minutes, records, approval.
Please answer this specific question.
Yeah. See, we have worked with a lot of women who are uneducated, but who've not gone to school, but who have facilitated themselves by either through adult literacy classes, they've taken financial training. It's the duty of the state to do training of all these women for finance.
But would you change their role? Would you change their responsibility?
See, number one, I would say, number one, the state has failed in even providing this kind of training for finance. Please tell me, even if you're 8 pass, you can't do the financial understanding. You and I can't do it. For 1 crore rupees, that requires financial training. Why are we not investing more at that level of financial training, of educational training? Number one. There has been total application. Number two, please remember, and I want to come back to the gendered roles. You know, the women, if men are not managing to reach the 8th, you will not expect women, because for several reasons. If there is no girl teacher, the girl will not go to school. How many, out of 1 million tribal girls, 1 completes 12.
Okay, but Vrinda, on my specific point, that should the role change? Should the executive role of the
think there are
Sarpanch
two things here. I don't think the Panchayat Samiti and Zilla Parishad and the
Require-
Sarpanch can be conflated. They are different. The roles of the Panchayat Samiti and the Zilla
I'm only
Parishad.
conflating because the same requirement for both.
Only on the Sarpanch. The Sarpanch actually today, and Mr. TSR has not mentioned that, has at least 3 persons assisting him. We have a Sarpanch here, she can tell us. Naroti is a Sarpanch, she can tell us. They have people who assist them in performing these tasks. It's not as though she has to perform all these tasks by herself. Secondly, maybe the role should be revisited. I agree with that. But it's also true that they have other persons who assist in the performance of that
Can
task.
I just ask them, लाडू राम जी, यहाँ पे कहा जा रहा है, और नौरती जी आपसे भी पूछूंगी, यहाँ पर कहा जा रहा है कि जो पैसे एक खर्च स्पेंडिंग के लिए पैसे दिए जाते हैं, अगर आप पढ़े लिखे ना हो तो मुश्किल होती है वो समझ।
सर, मैं आपको कह रहा हूँ कि जब मैं 7वीं पास हूँ, जब मैंने जो काम करवाया है, जो देखना है, पत्थर, रेती, उनका पूरा हिसाब रखना पड़ता है। कैसे नहीं होता है? होता है तो सीख कैसे नहीं होता?
और आपसे भी पूछूंगी, यही बार-बार बोला जा रहा है कि जो 1 करोड़ का जो बजट होता है खर्च करने के लिए, बिना पढ़ाई लिखाई की मुश्किल होता है वो समझना।
मेरे को तो यही समझ में है कि जितना भी टेंडर छूटते, मेरे को कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती है पढ़ाई लिखाई के, मेरे को कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती है। दिक्कत होती है जो MB भरने वाला जैन होते हैं, एन होते हैं, नाप चोप करने वाला होते हैं, और जो टेंडर के अंदर जो भी बिल वाउचर आते हैं, नाप चोप का प्रश्न है। मैं तो एक रुखाड़ी करने वाली हूँ।
आपका नाम बताइए
जी। कमला देवी तिलोने, सरपंच।
तो आप क्या कहेंगे ये सारे विवाद?
आप जैसे एजुकेशन की बात चल रही है वो तो सही है, लेकिन जैसे संतान की बात चल रही है वो भी सही है, टॉयलेट की बात चल रही है वो भी सही है, लेकिन ये बताओ कि आज से 50 सालों से अनपढ़ सरपंच आते आ रहे हैं, जब तक एमएलए को एमपी को पता नहीं है जितना उस बारे में जान सकता है सरपंच, गांव का बारे में, गली का बारे में, मोहल्ले का बारे में, और सब जनता की सुनाई कौन कर सकता है? सरपंच। अब सरपंच के लिए पूरा पावर लगा रही है गांव तो, और गवर्नमेंट कह रही है 8वीं होना चाहिए, तो चोरी तो खुद सरकार ही है। सरकार क्योंकि हम ले आएंगे 8वीं की मार्कशीट में ले आएंगे, पैसे देंगे और 8वीं की मार्कशीट में लेके आ जाएंगे। क्या बात कर रहे हो? चोरी तो है सरकार ही। हमें तो नॉलेज है कि कैसे काम करना है, क्योंकि हमने 2 बार चुनाव ले लिया, 1100 वोटों से कुछ जीत के आता है, एक बार 500 वोटों जीत के आता है। मैं एक सवाल पूछूं, सुनो
But just 1 minute. See, no, just 1 minute. See, Sarpanch, the role of the Sarpanch is many things. It's also coordination of all the schemes that are happening. It's coordinating with different sections of society.
I think one minute. One minute.
Barka, train them. Let them get elected.
Okay,
Train them.
Why should you? No,
Barka, let them get elected and train them.
Can please speak one at a time? Please speak one at a time.
See, 1 minute. Why should we revisit the Sarpanch's role when instead the Sarpanches are rising up to the challenge? We should try to give more facilitation.
Siddhi, would you can I just get her to speak? Can I get her to get a word in, please? Kavita, she's barely getting to speak. Yeah.
Panchayat Sarkar should be strengthened with more functionaries, with more finance.
Can I ask you, you made a comment saying that you feel that if you met more educated people in your area, you'd be able to develop that area more efficiently.
Absolutely.
Give a specific example.
You know, when I first time became an MLA, I was dealing with the urban population.
Yeah.
And I'm an urban MLA. Still, I faced so many problems. Through the bureaucracy, there were certain people, through the people.
How would education make that difference?
I mean, they would be much more aware of what they want. When I used to go to schools and colleges, the girls had no demands, but the teachers had 1,000-fold demands. I wanted the girls to come and speak and tell me something what they wanted. There was absolutely silence.
Gulshan, I can see you kind of agreeing with that.
Yeah, you know, this is why I say it's you are making, these people are making this into a black and white thing.
Yeah.
But the fact is that an educated person
will be more aware of the demands.
But is a more confident person.
Yeah.
Is a person.
What do you mean by educated? School educated?
Okay, come on, let's not get trapped in that now.
The ordinance does not ask for competence. The ordinance
asks for a minimal qualification.
So that is where it hurts.
Acha, Kavita, let him speak.
Yes.
You know, the reason why, I mean, you may, I may appear to be on both sides.
Yes.
But it is, it's a complex
Indian
issue.
terms, it's pretty good.
And my sort of concluding take on this from hearing everything really is that there are much more important issues that we have in this country. And to me, it's much more important to eliminate criminals out of politics
than to create
be debating
this. Okay, you have a question, but I just want to take a few questions here. Yes. What do you think as an urban Delhiite? Obviously, you're going to say education is good, but after you've heard these women, are you a bit persuaded otherwise?
No, I mean, I understand the setting might be different. But Rajasthan is the least educated state, as the facts say. But all the people are opposing it so overwhelmingly that no, this should not happen. It's against the constitution and everything. Why not try the same experiment in a state which is a bit more qualified? So a state like Kerala, let's see the results over there.
You're saying where the literacy rates are better?
Yeah, because it's a good start. It's a novel start. Let's start it in a state where the education rate is high. Let's see what it props up. Let's see what the results prop up. If the results are positive, then why not?
I think that's a very sensible
Why not?
Okay.
Let's start with the parliament.
Let's answer the
Parliament.
question. Vrinda, answer. 1 minute, please, everybody. 1 minute. Vrinda, answer the question. His question is, okay, maybe in Rajasthan the socio-economic indices lead to a greater exclusion. Why not experiment in a state which has better criteria?
There are two answers to this. One, let's start from the Parliament of India, because they are really dealing with WTO. They are dealing with TRIPS. Because you need to read a lot of difficult stuff to be able to pass those laws.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Parliament of India. Let's say who remains. So let me finish. Why are we always hurting the poor most and then saying, oh, this is an experiment? Don't experiment on other people's lives. Take the burden on yourself.
Okay.
Second, no, my second point
here.
My second point on you cannot exclude people from democracy. This is the fundamental principle.
That's an absurd argument.
It's a discriminatory law. It's an absolutely discriminatory.
I agree with you. It will fail on that point.
Okay, 1 minute. GVL Rao.
Kerala, it won't work because it is 99.9% there. It won't mean anything there.
Okay, GVL Rao.
I think your program title, We the People, I think have a tradition or a habit of opposing anything radical and new. Give it a chance.
No,
Give it a chance. There is no sinister design.
We will oppose unjust.
There is no design.
It doesn't unjust.
I'm going to take another question here. Okay, silence everybody. Ajoy, Kavita, hang on.
It's not out of some
You have
fashion.
every right.
Kavita, GVL, 1 minute.
Can we call it we the literate people? Would you ever call it we the literate people?
Okay.
No, not literate. We
the 8th class school pass people? Is that India?
Okay, 1 minute. Question here and then Rohini.
Yeah, I have 2-3 comments. First,
One comment. What's your comment?
Okay, one comment is when people raise the voice about Dalits and backward classes, their main image is B.R. Ambedkar. He's the most educated person who ever came up. So aren't we being hypocritical?
You're saying it's a good idea.
Of course it's a good idea, and the problem is that we today are glorifying when we bring in people who are uneducated and telling the other people that they can implement them. We are glorifying.
Okay. Let Rohini take that question. 1 minute. Kavita, 1 minute.
Ambedkar very good. K.R. Narayan
Kavita.
President of India very good. It doesn't mean that the
Ajoy
literacy of women has been resolved.
I've got to move on.
The question
I've got to
of
take a
women's
break
literacy
and
is
we have
not
just
resolved.
5 minutes left on the show. Okay, 1 minute. You don't have a mic.
No.
You don't have a mic.
You have misunderstood the whole point.
1 minute.
You misunderstood
Here and then we'll come back to the panel.
My question is that instead of bringing about an overnight ban like this, why can't we not provide these people with a group of experts maybe who could provide them with additional knowledge, additional assistance?
Okay. You want to add to that? Yeah.
It was said that women wouldn't get the representation this way. So don't you think that the women who were mere the dummy candidates of their husbands or they could now understand that they are represented in a wrong way?
So you think it's a good idea?
Yeah, I believe.
Okay, Rohini, come in on that and then I have to go into a break. Yeah.
So just 2 quick things.
Yeah.
So one thing that's interesting is completely missing from the discussion right now is why are they getting elected?
Yeah.
So you could actually think of a completely different way of saying have a lot more voter information. You inform villagers of exactly what the roles are. Tell them how important education is. We have done that. We do see it leads to them more literate candidates enter the fray and they get elected also.
Yeah.
So you could completely say that what you need to do to start with is just inform voters.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is, and we've done this, it's the educational data currently being filed, because right now you have to file affidavits, is very poor quality. So I think even the fact of what it's going to take in the next 15 days to validate this is very unclear going to happen. And just the last question, sorry, just the last thing on the dummy candidates. We are talking about a lot of women who are not running from reserved seats. These are women who are actually winning against men in unreserved seats.
Yeah. Okay, question here and then a break.
Yeah, more than dummy candidates, everyone always knows how to bypass the rules. Like these people mentioned, you bring in a rule. If these people who are now uneducated, they can always pay that 500 rupees, 1000 rupees and get certificates. How will the government check out whether each and every person who's given that certificate, whether it's a genuine certificate or not?
I have a question for Ajoy before I slip into a break. You've attacked the BJP for this, but you made a big fuss about Smriti Irani not having a degree and being HRD minister. So if degrees don't matter, why did the Congress? I know. I just want your position clear on this.
And the debate was on the qualification she put up on the on what she was qualified on. First of all, let's not confuse one her educational qualification, what she claimed to be educated.
Yeah.
Like you can get 6 days degree in from a Yale or something like that. So the stuff was, no, that was where the issue was. It was not on a qualification.
No, but I remember Ajay Markan saying you can't have an HRD minister without a degree.
But let's see again. You know,
it wasn't just about what she said on an affidavit.
But we didn't prevent her from getting elected to the Rajya Sabha. The question is, and we don't say
you couldn't have.
One second. Let me complete.
Again, you can pass such a law in Parliament, no?
The question is,
I think
we are all missing the point. Is I don't think we have the right to prevent people from fighting elections.
Yes.
You can empower them, you can give them the resources. because the voices will be suppressed. If you prevent rickshaw-wallahs, who is going to raise the voice?
Okay, GVR Rao, one sentence, then I have 3 minutes left of the show, so come on.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think, personally, it's not violative of Constitution, but anyway, Supreme Court is examining it.
Will
Let's
you
wait
bring it in the center?
for the
Is
constitutionality.
the BJP's national view?
One quick sentence. I think it's a damn good idea, but instead of starting from the bottom grassroots level where the education is low, it should start from the MP level first.
Absolutely.
Okay, got to take a break. Got to take a break, Gurcharan. Coming back for final comments right after the break in a minute from now. Welcome back. You're watching We the People. We're debating an ordinance in Rajasthan that lays down a minimal educational qualification for local body elections at the Sarpanch and the Zilla Parishad level. Before we get final comments from our panel, a few questions from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Rao. Sir, don't you think that instead of incentivizing people of society, it will actually create a divide and result in a social backlash?
Is it divisive in philosophy?
I don't think so, but as I said, it's a sort of an experiment, and in the next few weeks we would know how practical the idea is. If there are certain groups which will actually not get represented, I think.
And at the very same time, this discussion has become so subjective. There is no clear definition of what qualification is. Let's say somebody who's been left out and whose 8th failed, if he wants to come back into this thing, will we have an entrance test or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. How do you define qualification?
Ma'am, my point is that an 8th pass qualification in any way does not provide the skills necessary for the administrative functions that a Sarpanch has to perform.
Absolutely.
So instead, can't we have a training process or some proficiency test? That is more relevant because this lady is not even a 5th pass, but she's a lot better than any random 8th class.
Okay, let's start taking last comments. I'll start with you, Siddhi. Is this an experiment? And why the ordinance? Why the hurry? Why the hurry?
I think it's for the change. I will again say that it's for the change. It is to minimize the financial irregularities. It is to empower with a lot more education, and education is the key, and therefore the bill.
Okay, Rohini, last thoughts.
I think I would urge, there's a lot of evidence out there that we can look at. We can look at a lot of the questions that have been raised in existing evidence, or whether we are seeing on average educated people making better decisions. What does it mean to have a class 8? And I think you could do that rather than having to have a real-time experiment at the scale of a state.
Okay, Gurcharan.
We've had a lot of sound and fury this evening.
Yes.
But I frankly think this is not going to stand up in the court.
Okay, last question here.
Well, I feel, can we say that with education, we'll be able to provide non-corrupt, sincere administrators in
What do you
future?
No evidence.
That's what I want to question with the ordinance. Can we produce non-corrupt, sincere, determined?
You want to add to that?
Ma'am, I simply want to say that कि अगर ये शुरू करना है तो दिल्ली से शुरू करो ना आपको
Well
proof
said.
दिख जाएगा.
Kavita, some people opposing it are opposing it not because they think it's a bad idea, but because they think it's selectively applied. You know, why the most vulnerable section of society? Would you say this is a good idea if it was coming top down instead of bottom up?
See, you cannot wipe out illiteracy through this. You will only eliminate more people. You'll create a more unjust
Okay, this has
society.
to be the last question.
You require qualifications in every field. You require a qualified principal in school, and you require proper MBAs. Then why not in politics?
Exactly.
You are educating children. Why not your leaders?
Okay, TSR, that's I guess echoing your view. Last thoughts. Yeah.
Firstly, this reflects, as I said, the failure of education system.
Yeah.
It's a wake-up call for us now.
Yeah.
This is a computer age, digital age. India is going to be left out because use of computers requires minimal
At the
knowledge.
end of the program, are you persuaded to think otherwise about the ordinance?
No, on the contrary, ordinance I think is ill-drafted in my view.
Yeah.
I think it is violative of Article 14, and I think it is too hasty and it is too jumpy. But the idea behind the article is excellent. It should be pushed.
Okay, question?
Is it filling the gap between the supply side and the demand side? Because if we see the educated people will go for the further prospects. Because being a Sarpanch, they won't get they get so much low wages that they can't feed their family of 4.
Okay, you want to add to that?
Enough said about the ordinance. My last question to the Rajasthan government is, what are the actual steps taken for the ground level, like educating
to educate people,
to educate the children?
Okay, that's a whole different program. Ajoy, last thoughts tonight.
So,
yeah.
First of all, they closed 70,000 schools, so that's the step in reducing education. But the important part is it's evil because it prevents people. That's my fundamental right to fight elections. It's exclusive, and that's not the idea of India at all. And it should be challenged both on the road and in the courts everywhere.
Mr. Rao.
So if something is being tried out as a reform to find solutions to the problems that Panchayat Raj system
and
is,
why the ordinance?
grappled with,
why an ordinance?
I personally don't think it's a good idea. It could have easily been passed in Assembly. So ordinance is in any way bringing about getting this bill passed in Assembly will not be a problem for the government because it has a big majority.
Vrinda, last thoughts. Got to close.
It's quite clear it's an unconstitutional ordinance. It's going to have an impact and exclude people from democracy. It strikes at the foundations of democracy. I'm very curious to know whether BJP thinks this is a reform which I think is draconian and exclusionary, is something that they would try out in other states.
Will you try it in other states?
No, this is a state government initiative. This is not something that...
So you don't think that one idea that should be imitated?
It's
okay.
It's a state government, but you won't try it.
Okay, we leave it there. We'll leave it there. We'll have to close.
We'll have to close. If this is not reversed.
I have to. We'll know soon enough in the Supreme Court. We will know soon enough in the Supreme Court on Monday as this ordinance gets challenged. I think it's fair to say that the opposition is not to education, and certainly in an ideal world we'd all want educated representatives as well. But in a country where the state has failed to deliver that level playing field, does the ordinance, does the proposal become absolutely discriminatory? We leave you with that question. Thank you very much. Thank you.